I remember the exact moment my husband's stepson, Liam, first called me Mom. It wasn't planned or forced, and it wasn't one of those moments that ends in a burst of joyful tears and slow violin music like in the movies. It was casual, tossed over his shoulder as he headed out the door, backpack slung over one arm. "Bye, Mom," he said, and just like that, the words settled in the air between us like it belonged there all along. I was stunned. Liam had always been respectful but distant, understandably so. He was 15 when I married his stepfather, Brian. His biological mother had passed away years ago, and even though I never tried to take her place, I could feel the invisible boundary he'd drawn around himself. I didn't blame him. I was the outsider, the woman who came after. So that day when he called me Mom, even without thinking, it felt like a fragile bridge had finally been built. I stood there in the kitchen, my hand still wrapped around the handle of a pot, unsure whether to smile or cry. Liam had grown a lot in the 3 years we'd been living together. By the time he turned 18, he was taller than Brian, with the quiet confidence that came from finally finding peace in a life that had been full of changes. He was respectful, funny in a subtle way, and had a gentle protectiveness about him, especially when it came to me. Sometimes I would catch him glancing at me across the living room while we watched TV, like he was making sure I was okay. Other times, he'd offer to help with groceries or carry heavy things without being asked. I thought it was just his way of showing appreciation. I had no idea there was more beneath the surface. That night started like any other. Brian had flown out for a work conference in Denver. He'd be gone for 2 days. I wasn't used to being alone in the house at night, and although I didn't say it out loud, I was relieved that Liam was staying in. He had come home from college for the weekend, something he'd been doing less often now that he was adjusting to campus life. We'd ordered pizza and watched a documentary he picked out, something about deep-sea mysteries, the kind of thing he loved. He sprawled across the couch while I curled up at the other end, our legs occasionally brushing. Neither of us moved when that happened. Maybe that should have meant something. After the movie ended, I got up to clean the kitchen. Liam followed, carrying empty soda cans and plates. I told him he didn't have to, but he just smiled. "I want to," he said. "You do enough around here." I laughed, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Well, it's nice to be appreciated." There was a pause, a strange one. Liam's eyes lingered on me longer than usual. Then he said softly, "I do appreciate you more than you know." I turned toward the sink, pretending I hadn't heard the change in his voice. I wasn't sure what he meant by that. Maybe he was just being sentimental. Maybe being home made him feel more open. After he finished tidying up, I stretched and said I was heading to bed. Liam hesitated before nodding. "Good night, Mom," he said again. I smiled. "Good night, Liam." But I couldn't sleep. I lay there in bed staring at the ceiling, my thoughts tangled in memories and confusing new feelings. There was nothing inappropriate about how Liam had looked at me. Not really. But it lingered. I replayed his words over and over. "I appreciate you more than you know." Was it just gratitude? Or something more complicated? The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of wood settling. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. I sat up, heart racing. "Yeah," I called out. "It's me." Liam's voice came from the hallway. "Can I talk to you?" I hesitated. "Sure, come in." He opened the door slowly and stood there in a white t-shirt and plaid pajama pants. His hair was tousled, like he'd been lying awake too. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Can I sit?" "Of course." He sat on the edge of the bed, far enough to be respectful, but close enough that I could see the worry on his face. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable earlier," he said suddenly. "When I called you Mom. Or when I said what I said."
"No, Liam."
"It was sweet," I replied honestly. "It just caught me off guard. That's all." He exhaled. "I've been trying to say it for a while. You've done so much for me, things you didn't have to do. You've been kind, patient, you never made me feel like I was just a burden from my dad's past." I reached out instinctively and touched his hand. "You're not a burden, Liam. You're part of this family. You always have been." Our eyes met then, and I saw something shift in his. Something more intense than gratitude. He looked away quickly, his jaw tightening. "There's something else," he said after a pause. "Something I shouldn't say, but I can't help it anymore." I froze. "I think about you," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "I know it's wrong, and I swear I'm not trying to ruin anything, but sometimes I look at you, and I wish things were different." I pulled my hand back gently. "Liam, I know," he said quickly. "I just needed to say it once. I'm not asking for anything. I needed to be honest." His face was filled with a vulnerability I wasn't ready for. He wasn't trying to cross any boundaries. He wasn't manipulating or pressuring. He was just a young man, caught in a wave of feelings he didn't fully understand. "Thank you for being honest," I said carefully. "But we both know this can't go any further. I love you, Liam, but not like that. I'll always care about you, but I'm your stepmother. This family means too much to me." He nodded, his throat tight. "I know. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize for feeling things. But we do need to keep those feelings in check." He stood up slowly, wiping his eyes. "Good night," he whispered. "Good night," I replied, my heart breaking a little for him. He closed the door behind him, and I lay there staring into the dark for the rest of the night. The next morning, everything was normal. Almost. Liam was quiet at breakfast, but not cold. He washed his plate, helped me bring in the mail, and said goodbye like he always did. There was no drama, no breakdown. Just a quiet understanding that some things, no matter how deeply felt, have to stay in the realm of fantasy. Over time, the tension faded. He went back to college. I continued living with Brian. Liam visited less often, and when he did, we kept things light, respectful, warm, but distant. He never brought up that night again, and neither did I. It became one of those memories locked in a quiet room inside my heart, visited only in the rare hours when the world is still and your thoughts sneak out. Years passed. Liam grew into a successful man, got engaged, and started a life of his own. He introduced me to his fiancée with a genuine smile, and I could see the peace in his eyes. Whatever feelings he once had for me had long faded into something softer, safer. A cherished but distant part of a confusing time in his life. At his wedding, he danced with me during the mother-son dance. He held my hand and whispered, "Thank you for always being there, even when it was hard." I smiled through tears and said, "You'll always be my son." And this time, the word "mom" didn't carry confusion. It carried closure, love, and a bond that survived even the most complicated moments.